Hello, everyone. My name is Yoko Yamakata from the University of Tokyo, Japan. We propose a new method of nutrition management by recipe-oriented food logging. We have developed FoodLog Athel, an image recognition-based food logging application for athletes and nutritionists to manage their diet. It is very simple to use. Take a picture of a meal, and recognize each food item and calculates the nutritional value based on the name of the item. There are many food management applications with this kind of functionality, such as MyFitnessPal, MyPlate, and LogMeal, that are publicly available and used all over the world. So how do our applications calculate the nutritional value from the name of the food? In fact, we have a number of recipes registered in our application, called standard recipes. The standard recipes list the ingredients, their quantities, and have accurate nutritional data per weight unit, so that the nutritional value of the dish can be calculated by summing up the nutritional value of each ingredient. For example, if the dish in the photo is recognized as cabbage rolls, the application records 293.5 kilocalories per serving by referring to the standard recipe for cabbage rolls. On the other hand, if the photo is recognized as a meat and potato stew, the application would refer to the standard recipe for meat and potato stew and estimate that the dish has 357.3 kilocalories. However, here is one problem. One day, Ms. Brown ate cabbage rolls, so she submitted a picture of them. Mr. Smith also ate cabbage rolls, so he registered a picture of them. The application correctly identified both pictures as cabbage rolls and created food logs that recorded that these users ate 293.5 kilocalories of energy. However, that amount of energy is not from the cabbage rolls eaten by Mr. Brown, nor is it from the ones eaten by Mr. Smith. It's the energy value of the standard recipe for cabbage rolls that the application has. This is obviously not accurate. This is because their recipe for cabbage rolls is not the same as the standard recipe. Nor is their recipe the same. Recipes vary from home to home, and even within the same home, they use seasonal ingredients, or change the quantities depending on the season, or the price. We investigated how much the nutritional value of dishes with the same name varied from household to household. Between 16 and 21 participants created recipes for macaroni au gratin, meat and potato stew, fried pork with ginger sauce, cabbage rolls, spaghetti with meat sauce, and hamburger steak, respectively. For each recipe, a nutritionist manually calculated the nutritional value per serving, resulting in the distribution of energy per serving as shown in this graph. The graph shows that some recipes have more than 3 times as much energy as others, even though they have the same name. This figure shows the distribution of energy, protein, fat, carbohydrates, and salt per serving for the cabbage roll recipes written by 13 participants. The differences in nutritional value are most strongly influenced by the size of one serving, with recipes with smaller energy values tending to have fewer other nutrients as well. However, some recipes show irregular variations, such as 60% energy and 38% protein, or 70% protein and 30% carbohydrates. The above facts show that it is not realistic to fix the nutritional value of a dish by its name. So how do we solve this problem? The answer is simple. Ask each user to write his or her own recipe. They may know what ingredients, in what quantities, and how to cook the dish. If they don't know, they can measure the amount of ingredients when they cook it. Therefore, we propose a recipe-oriented food logging method, in which food management is not recorded by the name of the dish, but by its recipe. However, to calculate accurate nutritional values, it is not enough to write recipes often seen on the web or in magazines, but it is necessary to specify the types of ingredients in more detail. For example, to specify the nutritional value of beef round, according to the standard tables of food composition in Japan, you must select one of the 24 candidates shown here. If we select beef, imported beef, inside round, lean, raw, its energy per 100 grams is 132 kilocalories, but if we select beef, crossbred, Holstein and Japanese black, steer, inside round, fat, raw, has 734 kilocalories of energy, about 5.5 times higher. It is not easy for the ordinary people, not nutritionists, to choose the right ingredients from these 24 choices. Therefore, our application allows users to create their own recipes by copying a base recipe and rewriting only the differences. Use 300 grams of minced pork instead of 200 grams, or consommé instead of tomatoes, and so on. The ingredients for the same dish are usually very similar. With any luck, there will be only a few places that need to be edited. Recipes for dishes with the same name from the same family are usually fixed, so once a recipe is recorded, it can be used for a long time. If a user changes a recipe due to seasonal or price changes, there should be very few edits if the recipe is copied and edited. Additionally, we propose a standardized recipe format for recipe-oriented food logging. Unlike recipes on the web or in magazines, these recipes are not intended to teach someone how to cook. As mentioned earlier, all ingredients are linked to the nutrition facts table. The instructions are represented by a flow graph, as shown on the right, which can be entered by simply choosing an action and its target ingredient. Since this flow graph is only used to calculate the nutritional value of this recipe, the details of the actions are not necessary and can be chosen from broad expressions such as cutting, mixing, and heating. Here is the user experience throughout with RecipeLog. The user selects a basic recipe that is closest to the recipe they want to make, copies it, and edits it to create their own recipe. RecipeLog users are expected to be supported by a dietitian, and the information entered is sent to the dietitian. The dietitian will correct any inaccuracies, evaluate the nutritional value of the user's intake, and provide feedback to the user. This is how RecipeLog works. In this video, the user copies a minestrone recipe she has recorded in the past, changes the pork loin to sausage, and reduces the weight from 100 grams to 80 grams. Also, 50 grams of broccoli was newly added. In the instructions, sausage is automatically replaced by pork loin, so there is nothing to change. For broccoli, the user adds a cutting and boiling action, and finally a mixing action with the other ingredients. You can also see the flow graph. RecipeLog can be installed from the App Store or Google Play. However, sorry, the English version is still in the testing phase. In RecipeLog, users edit existing recipes to create their own recipes, and keeping track of these changes can reveal what makes each recipe different. This figure shows the history of two users each editing the basic recipe for a typical Japanese meat and potatoes recipe. User A's recipe above is a recipe that simmers the ingredients directly without frying them in oil, and the procedure is simplified. It is expected to be a side dish since the quantity per person is small. User B's recipe, on the other hand, has been modified to increase the nutritional value by increasing the variety of ingredients and adding a boiled egg, suggesting that it is a main dish. By collecting such variations from many users, we may learn about possible variations of meat and potato stew, and a more authentic, typical way to make meat and potato stew. How about the usability of RecipeLog? Regarding ingredient input, ingredients need to be input by selection in order to calculate accurate nutritional values. Experimental results with 13 participants showed that the proposed method, which inputs from a base recipe, can significantly reduce the input time, compared to the conventional method, which inputs from scratch. On the other hand, the proposed method edits the base recipe by selective input, whereas the conventional method inputs instructions from scratch in free-form sentences. Since the input time was longer for the proposed method, improving the interface is a future task. Overall, we confirmed that the proposed method takes the same or shorter time to input recipes than the conventional method. Our next step is to build and publish a skeleton recipe dataset. We have already published a dataset of 100 typical Japanese recipes via RecipeLog with titles, ingredient lists, and instructions represented by both free text and flow graph. This is a novel recipe dataset in two respects. The ingredients are linked to the nutrition facts table, and the instructions are expressed in flow graphs. An English language dataset is in progress. Conclusion. We proposed a recipe-oriented food logging method. Users input their own recipes as a skeleton recipe. The skeleton recipe is unique in that the ingredients are linked to the nutrition facts table and the instructions are represented by a flow graph. To reduce input costs, Users create their own recipes based on similar recipes, rewriting only the differences, rather than entering from scratch. A smartphone app RecipeLog was built and released. We experimented with this app and found that the time required to enter a skeleton recipe was the same or shorter than with the conventional method. Building a dataset that includes images is a future work. We have already released datasets for 100 typical Japanese dishes. An English language dataset is in progress. Thank you for listening.